debate. And we're talking leadership skills now. What kind of qualities do you think it takes to be a great leader? Maybe you think you need to be a good speaker, a good orator, as I was saying about Boris Johnson yesterday in the previous hour. What about great ideas? How do you formulate ideas? How do you present a really good case? My guests this morning have just come back from America, where they were chosen to take part in the US State Department's International Visitors Leadership Programme, where they got to meet leading figures in politics and different communities and learn key leadership skills. And it's all part of this organisation called the Patchwork Foundation. Mohammed, Randeree and Hannah Kaufman, welcome to the programme. Thank you very much for joining us on the Asian Network today.
Thank you so much for having us.
So, tell us exactly what is the Patchwork Foundation? Never heard of it in my life. It's quite a surprise to see it, actually.
So explain. In a nutshell, the Patchwork Foundation is a charity that helps young people from underrepresented communities get more involved in politics. If you're someone like me who immigrated to the UK 16 years ago from South Africa and felt slightly disenfranchised or locked out of politics, we give young people the opportunity to meet with politicians and talk about what's important to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have a few different programs in which we do something called a Patchwork Masterclass program, which we both graduated from, where we've met politicians from different parties, from civil servants, just to find out more about their roles. People have gone door knocking with different politicians. We've gone to party conferences. We also host the MP of the Year awards, where we acknowledge different MPs who have done a lot for their communities. So that's generally what we've been doing, and it's generally for young people, roughly between the ages around 18 to 30 generally.
And a lot of what we do is also very skills focused. So we help young people who might be lacking a bit of confidence, and we give them the skills that allow them to have the confidence to be able to speak their mind, especially in a political setting. That's our big focus.
It seems like the focus is fairly wide, isn't it? So there's lots of things that the Patchwork Foundation does, but this programme specifically meant that you applied for it, and I'm guessing there was a competitive process which got you to America. Is that right?
Yes, so this trip is something which has been going on for 70 years. It's a trip where they get young emerging leaders from different countries to go to the US and learn, and you have to get nominated. So through Patchwork, we were nominated, and then we did an application process. There's lots of different people who go every year. I think there's around 5,000 from people who go to the US on this trip every year from different countries. So we were a trip of 7 who came from the UK.
In the current climate of where American politics is, diplomacy as well is obviously a hot topic, isn't it, at the moment? When you went, was there anything that surprised you about being within American politics, being with the lawmakers?
So I would say the one thing that I realized that is what we see on the media is not usually how the country actually is. I think we can kind of almost be blinded to all of the good stuff that's happening. And our trip definitely opened up our eyes to the good people trying to do very good things within America, whether it's within politics or whether it's within the communities.
Well, because often, as you said, what we see in terms of international news is things that have an international impact, and you don't see necessarily what's going on at a local level. Do you think that there's a little bit of a misnomer there, that there should be more of an acceptance or an understanding of what is happening, or do you think it's just not that interesting for people? I'm thinking about if we talked about domestic US issues on the news, would it be interesting to people when there are domestic issues in this country that are probably far more important to people living in this country?
I think one of the things we really found when we were there is how many local issues are similar to local issues that we have in the UK. So we've been looking often at issues of integration, about how refugees and immigrants have been joining a community, how they've been engaging and getting access to resources in the local environment. And that's something which is definitely an issue in the UK. And I think also just the fact that the US is a federal country, so in each state they have their own parliament, sometimes nearly as big as our parliament in the UK, just in a small state like New Hampshire, for instance. And I think it highlighted the even small debates there and policies we've heard there are really interesting to us. So I think, for instance, I heard like a drug amnesty policy, which was something I would never really have heard of in the UK that I found really interesting. So there definitely were really big comparisons of things that we could definitely take along, which would be interesting regardless if they don't only touch on very big international issues.
When were you both out there?
So we've just come back the last few days.
Yep,
I'm
Sunday.
still a bit jet lagged. It's been a three-week trip where we went all over America. We covered 5 different cities. We went to DC, we went to New Hampshire, we went to Iowa, San Diego, LA, which is on both sides of America. So yeah, traveling quite intensely for 3 weeks.
I have to say the sweet corn in Iowa is amazing if you ever tried it.
Oh, really? Okay, one of the perks then. Were they growing it out there as well?
Yeah.
Yeah?
So, actually, Iowa is one of the largest exporters of soybeans as well. So there was a big focus on relationships currently with China as well, and what the impact of the trade war is having on.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask you next: is how much of an impact do international concerns have on ordinary Americans? Because we know that, I know past presidents obviously have talked about trade, and they've talked about, I suppose, they've talked about the impact, but also opening America up to international communities. That's certainly been the rhetoric, hasn't it, for a long time. Now, not so much, and the rhetoric has changed. It's taken a bit of a sideswipe. Do you think, the people that you were talking to, for example, is that an issue that's of concern to them with President Trump now?
I think it definitely is. So for one example, really, I can really think of is when we were in San Diego and we met the mayor of Imperial Beach, which is basically on the border to Mexico, and they've been doing a lot of work on pollution on a very long-term basis, and they're definitely really impacted by Trump's comments regarding the climate change.
And is there much support? Is there much support for him, or do they want local lawmakers to have more of an impact?
I think there definitely is a support for local lawmakers. The fact that different mayors in that region have all joined together, and also are joined internationally to different cities, which are also dealing with climate change issues, shows that people are quite frustrated with some of Trump's policies, but they're trying to make sure that their views aren't being discarded just because Trump's in the White House. So they were reaching out and finding more innovative ways to get their message across and get their policies across.
I think it was really focused on the programs of change that they could implement within their own communities on a local scale. And we saw a lot of that as well in Iowa, where we met an organization called Creative Visions, who was working with getting gang members off the street. And a lot of the techniques that they were using were not too dissimilar to stuff that we should try to implement to tackle some of the gang-related issues that we're facing in London. So I think it was very local problems and people taking ownership for starting these programs of change to try and solve some of the issues that they were facing in their local communities.
This program is essentially about idea swapping and meeting politicians. But you're both in your 20s, aren't you? What does this lead to then for you both?
So one of the things I've really got involved in the last few years is getting more women involved in politics. And one of the things I found really interesting was meeting organisations in the US which do similar programmes. And particularly in the US, minority communities are always just bigger because the US is bigger. So any sort of programme which is trying to get certain groups into politics, there's just more programmes there. So I've definitely looked on ones which have really worked in the US and worked out how I can bring them to the UK, and seeing that their mistakes are ones I won't make because I've seen more different things going on.
I think a big focus for me is I was brought up in a conservative Muslim community within the United Kingdom, and both my parents are teachers. So my focus is working with young people and making sure that specifically Muslim youth have an open view of the world. They want to integrate better into British society. And a lot of the organizations that we met in America, specifically in Washington, we met a local mosque which was working across communities. So it's really promoting that in the interfaith dialogue, but also realizing that our young people are leaders in their own right now. Which I think one of the speakers that we met from Youth Service America mentioned that we keep calling our young people future leaders. They're not future leaders, they're leaders now. And we need to start investing in them as leaders now. So that's one thing we met
attract groups of people who are around 13, 14 with amazing ideas when they're dealing with racism in their local education system. And it's amazing to see young people of that age who have got so much potential and doing so much momentum on those issues, and just partnering with them, seeing which skills which we lack and which skills they lack, and swapping just to make sure that both our different campaigns we're trying to work on can improve together.
Is there an acceptance, do you think, that, you know, maybe with some of the groups that you met in various places in America, that the political process is really the only process that can impact change? Or do you think there are offshoots, there are groups that are, you know, not necessarily, as you said, not engaged with the political process, don't feel they feel disenfranchised from politicians, from lawmakers, from the process, or the jargon even. And they feel almost like they're victims of decisions being made for them. And you could say that about this country, and you can say that about America. But is there, do you think young people are feeling the way you are in America? Is there a certain subsection that is?
I think there's definitely people who are disenfranchised, and I can completely understand. We're seeing the same thing in the UK with the amount of polarised rhetoric in politics today. But depending where you are in America, there's different opportunities, and the word politics means different things. So in New Hampshire, they have one representative for every 3,500 people, compared to we've got one for every 80,000 people, and therefore it gives young people more of an opportunity to get involved in politics. And that's something we did see. They also had really similar blockers, and that sometimes to be in their local representative, they only got $100 a year, which works great if you're retired, but if you're a young person, you can't live on those salaries. There's definitely been still young people who have definitely engaged in politics, but often they're just finding their own ways in which to solve an issue, meeting politicians, but doing it on their own, just because often the spaces aren't accessible for them.
We also met organizations which were trying to break down the barriers to voting in America. We met an organization called Let America Vote. And they were, for example, if you registered in a state that you live in, but then you're studying in a different state, you have to re-register to vote. And there's a cost attached to that. And so they're working with politicians to try and solve some of those issues. I would also say that it was quite refreshing meeting. We met the young Republicans, and we realized that there are different kind of thoughts of view within the Republican Party itself. And actually some of the young people that we met from the Republican Party were quite progressive in their views. So that really challenged my own view of the party.
Yeah, I think the fact that in America, because we only think of it as two separate parties, but we're hearing people on the ground of young people saying that technically there's around 7, because in each party there's big subsects. So often young people who don't have a normal opportunity to express themselves, they're finding their own spaces, especially we're seeing the rise of young people in social democrats and the rise of young people in more socially liberal Republican groups. And I think that's where they're just making their own space if they haven't got any.
And so what have you learned in terms of what you're bringing back here? Because I'm guessing that you both have political ambitions, do you?
Yes. I think we both want to work engage in politics. I'm not sure.
Do you want to be politicians? Do you want to be MPs?
I want to make my community better and the society that we live in better. And if that means going into politics at some stage, then sure. But I mean, I think my main focus is making our lives better and more, our leadership more representative as well.
Yeah.
And the Patchwork Foundation helps you do that because it reaches out to people from diverse backgrounds in the first instance, isn't it?
Yeah, so especially through our masterclass programme, we're getting young people from all sectors of society who wouldn't traditionally think of politics as a background and somewhere where they're comfortable. And I think through this trip and just through the programme in general, we've all gained a serious amount of confidence and feel that politics is somewhere where we belong, and it feels natural to walk around Westminster just because we realise that we're any other member of society in the UK and we deserve to have our voice heard.
Yeah. And this is sponsored, if you like, by the US Embassy, isn't it, in London? So you have ties there in lots of different areas. I suppose you have a programme that you're going to follow. But this is essentially about Britain and the US being close allies, isn't it?
I think the whole point of this trip is to forge relationships. It definitely is. I think the trip was quite balanced in the sense of ideologies, and I think our group as well was very balanced in that sense. So there isn't an assumption that you must think this and this way of the current administration, for instance. But I think,
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is that we are stronger and we are better when we work together. And there's lots of ideas that we got on integrating refugee communities or working with elderly, or we met politicians which were making quite large strides in working with education legislation. And so it's stuff like that we really will bring back here and look at our own position and try to develop it.
Are you saying that the Americans are doing that sort of stuff better? Are they more progressive, or they just have better ideas?
I think they definitely aren't in a generalised way. I wouldn't say that. I just think that the US is so diverse, and I don't think that's something which we really think of as much. So we saw very different problems in very different states, and I think one of the opportunities that we're able to see is, if we're able to compare, for instance, a homeless problem in San Diego compared to London, and to look at different things and just to see what has been working there and what hasn't, and just build upon those either successes and failures. So just greater awareness of different opportunities and different strategies which you can take to certain problems.
Okay. And what happens after now? You've done this 3-week programme. Is there another programme? Do you visit other places, or is this just like an exchange trip between, the UK and America?
So I think the key focus is now kind of going through all of the information that we've gathered on our trip and going through all of the ideas that we've got along the way, and then passing that information on to the people that we serve, which is our young and diverse community of future leaders. So our main mission now is to pass on the knowledge that we have gained to everyone else within Patchwork and beyond. And I think this program hopefully should carry on for the next group next year, and we're excited about that. And I think a large part of the IVLP program is the Alumni network, and that connects us with leaders all around the globe. So who knows, we could be doing projects. And
if people want to get involved next year, how can they do that?
I mean, we're very easy to get involved via social media on Patchwork. So at Patchwork Foundation, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, and we post lots of different things which we're doing, whether it's the masterclass program, which applications are, I believe, currently open, which starts in January, to we go door knocking. We're always open to as many different people who want to get involved, and through that, the more we get to know you, the more hopefully we'll get involved in the future.
And if it's for people from, sort of underprivileged programs, is it a funded program? Do they have to, can you expect them to, will it cost them money to be part of the program? I suppose is the key thing.
So, I mean, we do offer sort of support where the circumstance dictates it, especially around travel. So we are very aware and considerate of that factor.
Yeah, but all sessions are absolutely free. I think that's the key point. Everything we do is free. We're now a registered charity as well in the last few months. So all our events are completely free to all young people who want to attend.
I think the main message is to just get involved. If you're young and you have an opinion and you have a voice and you want it to be heard, get in touch and get involved.
Wonderful. Well, Hannah Kaufman and Mohammed Randeree, thank you so much for joining us and telling